Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tiffany Flowers. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the campaign manager of the Frontline. What is the Frontline? Well, the Frontline is a joint campaign of the Working Families Party, United We Dream, the Movement for Black Lives, and the Rising Majority. We came together last year in the summer of 2020 after the uprisings, after the murder of George Floyd, to try to figure out how we could support and help and lead the 20 plus million people who took to the streets and demanded justice, racial justice, and change in America. Through the election and the rest of 2021, we've offered education series. Some of you have joined us for Frontline Fridays. We've had fun together. We've grown together. We've learned together. And tonight we're coming back together as a community to talk about this thing that has loomed over all of our heads, COVID-19. And not just COVID-19, COVID-19 boosters, COVID-19 vaccinations. What are we going to do about the children and the schools? And we, and Leslie Mack and I, brought together some of the smartest people in America right now who are leading this work and going to help us all figure it out tonight. So I hope you got some water and a good stretch and you're ready to learn and have this conversation with us. We're so excited to have you here. So tonight kicks off self-care season on the Frontline. And what is self-care season, you ask? Well, we at the Frontline have determined that it's time for us to reclaim this very hectic time of the year, usually known as holiday season, where people tend to get very stressed out, wound up, and overcome by all of the challenges of this season. And so what we thought, what better way to help the audience and the family that we've built than to redirect that energy to ourselves, to our communities and the things that matter to us and to the people that we love. And so I'll come back later and talk more about self-care season because we have so many great things in store for you that I'm happy to share. But again, we thought it was really, really important as the holiday approaches next week. And we know so many folks are really excited to gather and trying to figure out the best way to be safe and maybe navigate some tough conversations, that this was the best way that we could start to talk about self-care. So tonight, we have, again, so many experts and really, really smart folks here to help us navigate and talk about how we can be our best selves for our communities, our homes, and our families. So with that, I want to introduce the one, the only Leslie Mack. She is my friend, she is my colleague, and she is the communications director on the Frontline. And she's also a brilliant organizer who helped bring together all of these folks tonight. So Leslie Mack, my dear friend, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for all of your work on the Frontline and beyond. I'm so excited to be here tonight. We're going to be having a three-part conversation, so you'll see Tiffany a little bit later to wrap up our last conversation. But first, I want to start off our first convo, which is going to be really focused on the latest news and information about the COVID-19 vaccine booster shots. I happen to be getting my booster shot tomorrow, so this is perfect timing for me to get all the information I need as well. And so we're going to bring some of our fantastic experts to the stage right now, starting off with Dr. Stella Saffo, who is a board-certified HIV primary care physician, public health advocate, and founder of Just Equity for Health. Dr. Saffo serves as an assistant professor and strategic advisor at Mount Sinai Health System and Premier Inc., and is a founding member of several organizations dedicated to gender and racial equity and to civic engagement in medicine, including Equity Now at Mount Sinai, Civic Health Alliance, and the Coalition to Advance Anti-Racism in Medicine. In 2020, she was named one of Modern Healthcare's top minority clinicians to watch, and she is a current New York Academy of Medicine Fellow. She received her medical degree from Harvard Medical School and a public health master's with a focus on global health at the Harvard School of Public Health. She currently serves as a social medicine curriculum director and adjunct assistant professor of medicine at Montefiore Medical Center, and she also provides clinical care to patients in New York and has been featured in various academic and popular media, including CNN and MSNBC. Welcome, Dr. Sappho. So excited to have you here. We also have the amazing Dr. Tyson Bell, who is an assistant professor in the divisions of infectious disease and pulmonary critical care at the University of Virginia and director of the medical intensive care unit. Dr. Bell, welcome. And lastly, my homegirl, Dr. Nisi Hudson, who is the chair and science director for Hood Medicine Initiative, a nonprofit public health collective of scientists, physicians, hackers, and assorted geeks dedicated to reducing health inequities and curbing the spread of dis and misinformation. She has a BS in biology from MIT and an interdisciplinary PhD in computational biology from the University of Louisville, and she currently works as a research scientist at Elanco Animal Health. Welcome, everyone. And I know that was a lot of bios to go through, but I like to make sure everybody knows the pedigrees of the fabulous folks we have with us tonight. So welcome to the stage. Want to make sure everyone is unmuted so that we can talk and get into this conversation about boosters. So my first question, and we can have this, we'll start with Dr. Nisi and then we can go around, but why are boosters for the COVID vaccine necessary? One thing that we've heard repeatedly from folks being confused is that, does this mean vaccines aren't working or that the first rounds didn't work? Why are these boosters necessary? I'll throw it to you first, Dr. Nisi.
Okay. Well, firstly, it's not, thank you for having us. But it's not that the vaccines aren't working, it's that humans aren't doing what they should be doing. So, as we've talked about before, viruses are parasitic and they need hosts to replicate. And so, the more that we just have this idea in our head about this like invisible bubble of protection that vaccines create and not understanding like truly how they work to fight viruses, the more we resist the other necessary measures that go along with vaccination that help reduce the spread in the community. So right now, we had the vaccines. I honestly thought that people were going to, really latch on and be grateful after the harrowing death toll that we saw before they, were developed. But unfortunately, it's human behavior that is perpetuating the disease because COVID just likes crowds and coughs and close talkers, you know what I mean? And that's what we keep giving it, unfortunately. So as our immunity from vaccination or perhaps people who have been naturally infected wanes over time, and with all the borders open and not a lot of regulation on anything really, there's nothing stopping the virus from mutating. It's got all the hosts it needs. We all travel and living it up, going to the beach, hanging out, Thanksgiving, everything. And, that just is going to keep these waves of, the cycles of waves going, because as our immunity wanes, then new variants emerge. And, the danger here is that if we don't get in our head that this is going to be maybe like the flu in the way that we mitigate the spread and the fact that we have to have boosters on regular intervals, then we'll allow the virus all of the time and space and humans it needs to learn and adapt and evolve. It's all just Darwin,
Got it. Thanks, Dr. Nisi. Dr. Sappho, interested to hear, what have you told any of your patients or folks in your network about boosters and, why they're necessary right now?
It's a great question. And I get this question all the time. I really appreciate Dr. Nisi's perspectives on it, because it is true that there's a certain amount of our behaviors that are requiring us to continue to have to battle with COVID this far into the pandemic. The thing that I often tell my patients that I find that is comforting for them is that you should just think about the other vaccinations that you've gotten. And so other vaccine series like hepatitis series or HPV or just other vaccines that you've gotten, we often give you 2 or sometimes 3 doses. And one of the things that I try to remind people of when we talk about COVID-19 is no one has a magic ball. Humanity has never seen SARS-CoV-2 before. We don't know the playbook for this. And so it requires us to have some humility for the scientists and the clinicians and all the people that are working so hard to understand this virus, because what it means is that, yes, in March 2020, we thought we understood it in one way. In March 2021, we thought we understood it in another way. In March 2022, our understanding will continue to evolve. And with that, evolution comes updates to the way that we want to treat it. And so when we rolled out the vaccine initially, and again, this was a vaccine that has excellent historical kind of background and technology for it, but it's one of the fastest vaccines we've ever produced, actually the fastest vaccine we've ever produced. We knew the information that we knew then. And so when I tell people about boosters is that you shouldn't be so worried that, oh my God, how come they didn't know from the beginning that we would need 3 shots? Does it mean that they don't know what they're doing? It's more that our understanding of COVID evolves and you want it to evolve. You don't want us to stay with the old understanding, because what will happen is we'll continue to get sick. And so I think it helps you to think about it in terms of other vaccines have required multiple doses. And our understanding of COVID is going to continue to evolve, as exactly as Dr. Yancey mentioned. Variants change and people's behavior changes the way that the virus is impacting and affecting us.
Thanks, Dr. Saffo. Dr. Bell, I want to turn to you. I want to go to the next question, which is a little bit more about who should be getting the booster shot and when, but wanted to also give you an opportunity to, if you had anything to add to that first question around why are boosters needed, and does this mean something's bad with the other vaccines that we might have taken?
Thank you. And I'm very happy to be here. So, first, I agree that the vaccines have been phenomenal. I mean, in my ICU, once we had widespread rollout of the vaccines, the nature of who came to our ICU actually changed to being almost all unvaccinated people. And that still remains the case, that more often, if you're in the ICU or in the hospital, you are most likely an unvaccinated person. So there's clearly an effect. What we've also seen is that when there's a large wave of infections going on in the community that's being driven by unvaccinated people, it's kind of like a boat going through a harbor too fast, that it's going to make a wake. And even if you're not right next to that boat, it'll eventually get to you and it might affect you. And so what we've seen is that with the large wave of infections driven by unvaccinated people, we've seen a few breakthrough infections. And more often, those are in older individuals above the age of 65, or people who have compromised immune systems like active cancer or things like that. And so the reason for giving boosters really is to protect from that scenario where you might have infections in the community that are high that will find some of those higher risk individuals. So, and I'll be honest, when it comes to your question about who qualifies for boosters, I'll say that there's not universal agreement among physicians on who should get boosters. So let me just qualify it with that. But here's my take. I think for those people that are high risk of having a breakthrough infection with the wave going through their community, and these are certainly people that are immune compromised, those who are 65 and above, I think we all agree those people should get boosters. So if you haven't gotten your booster now, please go get it. Now, there's another category that the CDC made initially, that people that are 50 to 64 and they have some high risk conditions like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, diabetes, those sorts of things. They're also higher risk, a little less so than the folks who are older in age, but they should qualify for boosters as well. And then the third category was anyone else, any adult who was at high risk of exposure to the virus. And that included people like myself, people like teachers, firefighters, police officers, things like that. I think what's probably going to happen later this week, maybe tomorrow, is that the FDA is going to decide that anyone who's an adult can qualify for a booster. And I personally think that's the right way to go. Because right now, those higher risk individuals in our communities who are fully vaccinated, 65 and above, only 1 out of 3 of them are vaccinated right now. And we also know that when you have higher levels of antibody, and boosters provide that, it cuts down on transmission, meaning you're less likely to spread from one person to another. So I think this is a scenario going into the winter where it's coming. I think there's going to be another wave, and we need to put all the tools in our toolbox to fight this. And I think boosters are going to be a very key part of that. So I got my booster, my wife got my booster, and I've been telling everyone who qualifies to go ahead and get a booster.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. Dr. Yancey, I wanted to just trying to provide really straight, direct answers for folks and information. So if we got our first 2 shots, or one if you got the Johnson & Johnson, how long should you be waiting? Or is there a waiting period, a minimum amount of time between your last shot and when you should be able to get the booster shot?
So for the J&J, it's a little different. That one is 2 month is what they're recommending. But for Pfizer and Moderna, it's after 6 months after your last full dose. So for J&J, it's 1, and the others is 2. One thing they did notice that all 3 boosters like increase neutralizing antibodies, no matter what combination they were in, although Pfizer and Moderna seem to trigger stronger responses. So certainly if you're thinking about mixing and matching, in terms of choice, I think they've approved that just so that, people logistically will have different options, and then all for practical reasons, and also because it gives you broader protection from what they're seeing in early studies. So, that's kind of the timeline. And we've had a lot of questions about sort of the adolescents too, and that goes for them too. Everyone who got vaccinated, 6 months ago is ready for booster. So.
Got it. Thank you. Dr. Saffo, Dr. Nisi touched a little bit on this, but I just wanted to, as this last question for this round, can you mix the type of vaccine? So if I got Pfizer, is it okay to get a Moderna booster? Should I be trying to get a Pfizer booster? And what does that mean to access for folks right now?
It's a great question. I think the easiest way to think about this is that you should take the booster you can get. It's kind of what we said about the vaccines that you had access to. There are some studies that show that having a different vaccine as a booster may actually boost your immunity slightly. But it isn't, I think, unfortunately for many areas, and certainly for New York City where I am, you can't kind of come and order your shot as you will. And so what we are seeing a lot of folks doing is that if you got the 2-shot Pfizer series, when you go in to get your additional shot, you'll be given Pfizer as your 3rd shot. It doesn't mean that your booster didn't work. It doesn't mean that you're not getting the best. It's just kind of almost by logistics. Some of these public health bodies are just rolling out what you have. For Johnson & Johnson, that's a different one, especially for folks who have certain comorbid conditions like hypertension, diabetes, who got Johnson & Johnson. You do want to get an mRNA vaccine for your booster, because in that situation, it's shown to really provide you better immunity for COVID-19. And so I think that that's one of the ones where you can go in and say, I got Johnson & Johnson, I'd really like one of the other vaccines, and they are honoring that. But the most important thing with the boosters is to go ahead, exactly as we've said, and get one if you qualify, because we're entering this winter surge, since COVID won't let us be great, where we're going to see the numbers rising, and everyone being protected as much as they can will help you, and it will help others in your community that are high risk.
Thank you all 3 of you so much for this first little bit of information for folks around boosters. I know we're going to see Dr. Nisi and Dr. Saffo a little bit later. Dr. Bell, thank you for all of your work. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen myself for a moment and talk about our second topic, which is going to be about the latest on COVID vaccinations for young folks for ages 5 to 12, which is a very recent development. And so please allow me to bring onto the stage. First up is Dr. Quentin T. Chipley, who received his BA from Rice University, MDiv from Southeastern Seminary in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and at the University of Louisville received his MA in clinical psychology and his MD and PhD. He is a retired former counseling coordinator at the University of Louisville and is a board member at Beacon House Transitional Living Facility for Men in Louisville, Kentucky. Also joining us is Dr. Eric A. Yancey, a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He attended Southern University for undergraduate studies, Creighton University School of Medicine in Omaha, Nebraska for medical school. And after medical school, Dr. Yancey completed a pediatric residency at James Whitcomb Riley Hospital, a pediatric residency for children, where he was chief resident in his final year. Dr. Yancey presently practices pediatrics in Indianapolis, Indiana, and has practiced there for the last 42 years. In 2018, the Indiana University Minority Health Scholarship was named in his honor, and he serves as a medical director at Managed Healthcare of Indiana, a Medicaid managed care entity. He also enjoys singing and songwriting and recorded a CD entitled Modern Spirituality in 2009. And he's also a writer and wrote his first fiction novel this past year. And lastly, another one of my amazing homegirls, LaShira Lash Nolan, is a third-year student at Harvard Medical School, where she is serving as student council president of her class, the first documented Black woman to hold this leadership position. She is a published author and fervent advocate for social justice, whose commentary has been published in various outlets such as the Boston Globe and the New England Journal of Medicine. Most recently, she founded We Got Us, a grassroots community empowerment project with the goal of bringing vaccine education and access to Black communities in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Her work has earned her the honor of being named the 2020 National Minority Equality Forum's youngest 40 under 40 leader in minority health, a 2020 Young Futurist by the Root magazine, a 2021 Boston Celtics Hero Among Us honoree, and the 2021 recipient of the American Medical Association's Student Racial Justice in Medicine Award. Welcome again, another illustrious panel of amazing professionals. So excited to have you all here. So I want to talk about children and vaccines. This is new information for so many folks. And I know that this is information folks that have school-age children have been waiting on so desperately as they've gone through this pandemic. And so I'll start with you, Lash. What is the basic information? Which vaccines have been approved? What ages have they been approved for?
Absolutely. I want to echo everyone else's sentiments. It's so good to see you again, sis. It's so great to be here with everyone. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. But the basic information is that now children between the ages of 5 and 12 are now eligible to get the Pfizer vaccine. And this was something that was recently announced by the CDC this month. On the 2nd, they officially released that information. And this was after Pfizer did a study of about 3,200 children. And it showed that in those children, we had 90% effectiveness in reducing symptoms that we saw in kids. And this is huge because that means that we're going to be able to stop the transmission of the COVID-19 in this age group, and also like really empowers our children to be able to protect themselves and help us move in the direction of making sure that all of us are protected. So this is very exciting. And as of now, this is just for the Pfizer vaccine, but I know that more studies are being done to try to get this process up and going for the other vaccines that we've discussed today. And that's where we're at for now.
Thanks, Lash. Dr. Chipley, I want to go over to you and just ask, how was this decision made? Like, and does this vaccine for folks under 12 differ from the one that adults received earlier this year?
Well, children's physiology is not just small adult physiology. We've known this for quite a while, and of course, Dr. Yancey, when he gets to speak, will be able to tell us much more about that. But as a pediatrician, so it requires a special understanding of dosing, for one thing. You want to make sure you're getting correct dosing. You also have to understand that you might have interactions with other kinds of systems, and you want to make sure that you have a subject pool large enough that can detect these things. It's a bit more difficult, quite frankly, to recruit subjects within children testing for good reasons, because parents are going to be a little suspicious about placing a child within a study. And so sometimes it takes a bit longer to get through these things. And those who've been in the field for a while have memories of different times. For instance, back when there was a rotavirus vaccine some years past, decades past, quite frankly, that went all the way through approval and ended up having some problems, which caused surgical emergencies with a gut disorder called intussusception. So we are aware of the fact that there's going to be a lot of extra care taken anytime you start talking about working with a child. And so that's one of the reasons why there was this delay. And so I've been quite impressed, quite frankly, with how thorough all the groups have been, all the companies have been with and transparent with their studies and their data.
Thank you so much.
That's your question. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I want to turn it over to our 42-year pediatrician, Dr. Yancey, to just ask you, one, I wanted to just ask, how has it been being a pediatrician in the midst of this pandemic? How has your practice been dealing with the questions parents have and the anxiety I'm sure that has come with the, families dealing with this pandemic and school? So just to start off there is, how has it been for you and for your patients?
Well, it's been a little rough for starters. We actually pivoted to a lot more virtual visits where the parents could just actually be at home and we could actually go over a lot of things that way. We still remained masked with locked doors, and you have to buzz yourself in from the day-to-day type of things going on. But some of the questions that parents have asked me is that, if children don't get as ill in general as adults do, then why do they need a vaccination? And of course, one of the reasons is that even though they may not become as ill in general, we still have a number of children that have died from COVID who did not have any pre-existing conditions, a number of children who have become extremely ill from COVID who did not have any pre-existing conditions, and a number of children who have undergone a particular complication from COVID that was just completely not really understood why, but they actually had the disease and got this multi-system inflammatory syndrome going on. And so those are all reasons to do it. The other thing is that children still can transmit the virus. And so therefore, we have to make sure that we try to decrease the amount of spread as well. And so those are all good reasons why we should continue to seek vaccinations for the children. The dosage is different. It's only a third of the dose of what of the Pfizer vaccine of what the adults got, and those over 12. and it's the testing was done extensively. And so I think it's a good thing to do, number one, to avoid those serious illnesses, but also to try and decrease the number of people who can potentially transmit the virus. So that's always helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yancey. Lash, I want to come back to you and just ask, what do you think this development means for schools and the decisions that schools are going to be making, certainly going after this self-care season and looking forward to the next couple of years as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard to tell right now, but what I can imagine is that previously we've had vaccines that are required for kids to be able to go to school. And because we know that this vaccine is so effective, and because we know that things like MISC can be very detrimental and deadly for kids, it would make sense for us to think about requiring folks to be vaccinated, especially kids to be vaccinated in order to go to school. So that's something I could imagine happening. And I think as far as what this means on a population level, as I was mentioning earlier, it really means that we're going to have children able to really take agency over their health, and hopefully with the support of their parents and saying, yes, like I deserve to be protected too. And hopefully these children can feel safe going to school, in addition to making sure that we think about social distancing and wearing masks and making sure that we have good ventilation systems in place as well. But I think that this could mean that our schools can be safer. And I'm just very excited about this idea of kids being able to say, yes, I wanted to get vaccinated, and this is why it matters to me.
I love that, this idea of children feeling empowered to take control of their health and having conversations with their parents about it. So thanks to all three of you. We're going to see you a little bit later, Lash, in conversation with Tiffany. So thanks, Dr. Chipley. Thanks, Dr. Yancey as well. Any last things that you wanted to share with the audience about children and about the COVID vaccine before we close and go to the next conversation?
Let me just say, if I can just say real quickly, I think this is the first time I have ever seen in the 42 years I've been doing this, the amount of apprehension about the vaccines. And that comes from, I think, a lot of information that is flat out misinformation or disinformation. And I think that what we have to look at is that every serious disease that we've been able to wipe out, okay, and many of them I've seen from earlier when I first started, everything has been with the help of vaccines, with vaccines. We do not wipe out serious illnesses without vaccines. And so I think the parents, I'd like for them not to be afraid of these vaccines. It is the way to get out of this pandemic, to get out of this mess, to get the kids back to normal and doing the things they want to do, is to vaccinate.
And I will hold my statements for when we're talking about how to communicate, because they're more directly relevant to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chipley. Dr. Yancey, that was wonderful. Thanks for that additional note. And we'll see Lash and Dr. Chipley just a little bit later. And I think Tiffany's going to join me for a moment. Hey, Tiff.
Hey, Leslie, I'm back.
Yes, you are back. So I don't know about you, but that was a lot of really great information from some amazing experts. Was there anything that really stuck out that you didn't know before the conversation that you were like, oh, wow, that's new stuff for me?
I was literally just taking notes. So I actually, I'm the queen of Post-its.
He loves a Post-it, y'all.
I love a Post-it. So Dr. Yancey is just like the definitive, like, we can't move forward, right? Like, we can't. There's no way around this. We can't argue about it. We can't. That scientific period really felt like a really great tool. And then also when Dr. Chipley talked about being impressed with the care and the transparency as a longtime practitioner that was put into the vaccine, that feels like a good nugget to share. I think people want to hear, us, Leslie, we're constantly talking about care and relief, and people wanting to feel like there's been some personalization, some actual love and consideration of the recipients. And so that was really helpful.
Yeah, I know for me, as I said, I'm getting my booster tomorrow. So this is super timely for me personally. But I did not know that, this idea of just like get the booster you can get the vaccine that's available for you. And that the most important thing is to get one. That really hit me at home and something I'm going to definitely take with me in my conversation. So I'm actually going to turn the floor over to you to do the bulk of our conversation, which is the actual family talk. And I'll see you a little bit later.
See you later, Leslie. Yeah, and this feels good. And I'm boosted, everybody. I got mine last week with my husband. I took my first shot in March. And as you can see, no 5G, just jokes. Anyways, like Leslie said, we're going to move into what we really thought could be super helpful to our Frontline family. And this is the family talk. And I just want to, before we get started, name, right, that we're all family. We're not talking about your grandma. We're not talking about your auntie. We're talking about the royal us, right? Here on the Frontline, we're all family. We're an ecosystem. We realize that our liberation and freedom and wellness, right, is connected to one another. So when we talk about how did you talk about this to your family? How do you plan to talk about this to your family? We hope that you, when you think about family, think about your homegirls, you think about the lady that does your nails, you're thinking about the person that gives you your coffee that you see every single day, and how these conversations are going to continue to come up as long as we're in this global health crisis, and just trying to give you some nuggets. So with that, I will welcome back Dr. Chipley, Lash, Dr. Saifo, and Dr. Nisi. And I just want to jump right in it because we don't have a whole bunch of time. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Nisi, our hood medicine expert. In your family ecosystem, has there been a tough conversation? Has there been questions? Well, you're the doctor, Nisi, that stuff is fill in the blank. How have you managed those conversations in a loving yet educational way?
There have been a lot of people who ask questions, or they're seeking information. But honestly, I haven't been successful with everyone. There's a lot of pervasive, I'll say disinformation, because it is intentional in our communities. A lot of it has been propagated by like the ADOS movement, the Nation of Islam, that kind of trickles into our hip hop communities, and people start latching on to ridiculous conspiracies. And so it's been tough. Even my sibling, you know, like I don't think he's been vaccinated still. And literally, like I went to MIT, right? I've literally worked with viruses. I worked for a company that makes viruses. And he literally still said to me, but we don't even know what's in that though. Like, I do. It didn't work. So I think there's still these barriers for people, like, you know, people have been hesitant for a while, and we understand the reasons for that, the basis of that. But there's now this like holdout contingent that's resistant. And, you know, Dr. Chipley has been working with us to try to understand, you know, ways to communicate, to influence like health behavior change and things like that, so that, you know, not only as a science communicator, but also in my more personal relationships, it's going to be easier to sort of give someone over to that understanding. But I don't know. I mean, some people, I don't think they have the respect for the science, which I also understand, just because of how medically disenfranchised so many of our communities are. And also the way we restrict access to education in this country. So we have a very scientifically illiterate lay populace, and it's been hard for us to communicate in a way that doesn't feel contrived when, as you know, Dr. Safo was saying, things keep evolving. And people don't understand that research literally means research. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to keep finding out more, and then we update our understanding of things. And that nuance has been difficult to articulate in an atmosphere of distrust, I'll say.
I can't thank you enough for being so vulnerable. I can't imagine that this is easy. And I, as a civilian believer in science, I often wonder what that struggle is like for you folks on the other side, right? Because there's this disbelief and dependence on science at the same time. And it must be so mind-blowing, for lack of a better word. So when you're digging into those conversations, Lash, I saw you had a reaction to my question. So I'm going to ask you to dig in a little bit about if you've had experience and or success, failures, what you've learned, how to approach this conversation. I really want to stay here for a minute.
Yes, all of the questions. Honestly, the reason why I created the We Got Us project was because of all of the questions that I was getting from family members and friends about the vaccines when they first were rolled out. And I think that part of the issue is that there's just a limited amount of trusted messengers in our communities who have the information about the vaccine. And when you look at how many, and what that means to me is like, when you look at how many physicians in America who are Black, you're looking at like 2 to 3%. And then once you think about how data has shown that folks are more likely to want to seek more information about the vaccine if it comes from a trusted messenger, if we have limited trusted messengers in our communities, it's going to make it that much more challenging. But then once you have that trusted messenger, there's like all of these historical instances of how the medical institution has wronged our community. And some people see a Black doctor as part of that institution. So even though you're telling them like, look, I got the facts, I got a PhD in virology, it doesn't even matter. They're like, you're still a part of this system. And therefore I'll go and I'll, eat with you, chill with you. But at the end of the day, when it's this conversation, there's really this deep distrust of the system, which is totally understandable. So it's very complex. And I think that each person that I've talked to has had a different reason for why they haven't wanted to get vaccinated. Some people just think that like drinking green juice just makes them invincible. And they're just like, I've never been sick. Like, I'm healthy. I exercise every day. And I'm like so happy and proud of that. Cause I'm like, yes, like we all need to do that to keep our immune system strong. But at the same time, I'm like, Black folks, we need every tool in our toolkit to stay healthy, because at all times we have people who are literally coming for our lives. Like when we sleep, when we go to a cafe, all of that, our lives are actively being, are in danger. So I think that with this vaccine, it's just another tool in our toolkit to kind of just cover us and protect us. And I've tried to really pitch it that way when I have conversations with folks. And another thing I've had come up is my grandma or, different family members will say, I'm gonna just leave it to Jesus. God is gonna protect me. My community is praying for me. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. But I also think that God gives us tools. And I think that one of those tools are those individuals who put their minds together to come up with this vaccine. And I just want us to use everything at our disposal to make sure that we protect ourselves, because we're constantly under siege. And I think that that's really how I've tried to communicate this message to my loved ones.
Thank you so much for bringing up religion, because I feel like that's been a real a barrier for people, because then it takes the conversation, it completely derails the conversation from medicine, right? And getting into belief systems, and it's a lot. So thank you for flagging that. And again, honesty, vulnerability around this is not easy. Dr. Chipley and then Dr. Sappho, I want to hear from you, Dr. Chipley. I remember at the end of the last segment, you said you'd actually done some research. Thank you, Dr. Nisi, searching on this issue of hesitancy and the things that are coming up and how to kind of combat them. So could you tell us about what you've been finding?
Well, I wouldn't so much call this research as an application of what we've known as far as communication and gaining someone's trust for decades. So the first thing is to remember, I don't have any control over another person's thoughts or feelings. I only have control over my own. And so I have to decide when I'm going into this, am I going into a conversation or am I going into a debate? And that really will make a difference in the outcome. So if I'm keeping it in the terms of conversation, that's going to be very helpful, because debate is always a win-lose. And if I'm thinking about how can I be useful rather how can I be right? Because boy, I have a tendency to want to be right with a vengeance. As I used to say about my grandmother, she believed with grace with a vengeance. I mean, that was the way that she acted, and I have to put a break on that and say, how can I be useful in this conversation? One of the things that we do know is to be honest, of course, but the other thing too is to not do a direct confrontation. So if I can find an area in the other person's thought that I can latch on to legitimately. So for instance, quite frankly, in 2020, when they were first talking about getting a vaccination out, I didn't believe it was going to be possible to be done, because the training that I had 15 years earlier was such that it wouldn't have been done that quickly. It couldn't happen. So I was thinking, oh, this can't happen. There's no way. But then I found out that they've been working on a similar virus since 2007. It was the Middle Eastern version, the MERS. They knew a lot about this family. They also had a new technology, which we did not know about when I was in medical school. mRNA technology was not known for making vaccination. We knew about messenger RNA as far as what they did inside cells, but we did not know about using them in this way. So I was able to say to people, they're like, well, this is all new and it's rushed. And I say, well, I had those same feelings. And so we can start with the saying, I was where you were. And then I can move to say, and then I found out that actually this knowledge base has been built well over a decade. And that also we have a new technology, which is new. And so I can go from being where they are to showing them my experience of how I move. And that doesn't force them to make a decision, it just gives them the information. And it can leave things alone in that regard. A personal anecdote is that, I come from a family that actually is, quite science believing and science following, although I was surprised. My father's in a long-term care facility, and my sister tends to have the onus of most of the decision making because she's only 2 miles away. And when they came out with the vaccination, she had had the previous experience of a friend of theirs from church having paralysis, which temporally came after a vaccination. Now, I'm not going to say that it was causal, but because that's a whole different issue. But there was paralysis, and so she was quite scared, and so she actually asked the facility to delay vaccinating my father. And all I did was make the statement, actually through my brother, and say, well, one of the things that I did learn in graduate school and medical school is that the plural of anecdote is not data, and just let it sit there. And didn't have to go back, didn't have to argue. And about 2 weeks later, it percolated and she remitted and she arranged for him to get the vaccination. And so I stated my truth and my experience, but I did not try to argue it. And that was something that I have found to be very useful within certain populations. So the other thing is to have my own plans. For instance, to be able to tell people, say, well, I just don't eat in restaurants because eating in restaurants and masking are incompatible with each other. That's just what I've chosen to do, for instance. And so I tell people I have chosen to be vaccinated fully and boosted at this point because I'm in that 65 range plus a 6 vessel cabbage, which is a whole other story. But so the communication point is know what you're wanting to do, and know also that you will not always win. You will not always see the conversion happen. Your job is to carry the message. It's not to carry the person.
That is, again, another post-it. This time, do I want to be family? Family, these are such great tools. Do I want to be useful or right? Oh my goodness, I could use that in every day. So many everyday interactions. Family, is this a conversation or a debate? Because if it's a debate, right, you're walking in wanting to win, and this isn't about winning, right? The win is moving our loved ones to getting that vaccine. No direct confrontation. So if it goes up, that's not where we're trying to go with this. We're trying to go up to the CVS and get a booster, not up arguing over the Thanksgiving Day. And I statements, what I noticed is Dr. Shipley said a lot, I chose to get vaccinated. I don't eat in restaurants. I made these decisions for my safety. And so a lot of this, it feels like, and not a lot of that. Those are very, 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 very helpful. I don't know if y'all want some notes, maybe we can put them in an email or something, but. So Dr. Sappho, if we could do a little role play, because I'm sure you've seen it, your patient gets in front of you and they're just hesitant. There's no, I'm just hesitant. I'm just hesitant. How does that work from your perspective in the conversation?
Sure. Do you want to actually do the role play? You want me to kind of tell you the steps?
Ooh, can we do a role play? I'm an
Sure.
organizer. I love a role play.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
So I hear that you have some questions about getting vaccinated, and that's totally understandable. So many of my patients have questions. Will you tell me more about what you're thinking?
I'm just hesitant.
What does that mean to you? Does it mean that you kind of want to wait a little bit and then get it later, or you're not sure if you'll get it at all?
I'm more of a wait and see kind of person. You know, I stay prayed up. I drink my juice and I'm just kind of waiting to see.
That makes a lot of sense. And those things are incredibly important. If you think about it, it's for your overall health that we're talking about, not just protecting you from COVID. The one thing that I will say is that COVID, there's like an urgency to COVID. And so I appreciate you wanting to wait, but I also want to make sure that you have a little bit of information about some of the things that we're seeing now with COVID. And one of them is that the vaccine has, the virus has changed its form. It's mutated so that it's more severe. So when you get this version of COVID, and I'm sure you've heard it in the news, a Delta variant, the concern is that it will make you even sicker if you're not vaccinated. So the only reason that I kind of want to bring this up is because I understand you want to wait, but there is a bit of an urgency of now that, I'm curious if that impacts what you're thinking at all.
Yeah, I don't want to be down bad.
Yeah. And what's really scary as a healthcare worker, I will tell you, is that lots of my, so I'm in the outpatient setting. I see you guys when you're pretty healthy and you come to me after you've been sick. But a lot of my colleagues who are, in the inpatient setting, like the emergency departments and the intensive care units, are telling me that the patients who come in with COVID who are super sick, they're the ones who are unvaccinated. And they also had their green juice. They also stayed prayed up. But for some reason, when they got COVID, their immune systems were pretty severe. Now, you also have, and then I would insert whatever comorbid condition they have, you also have high blood pressure, which we've seen makes it a little bit more likely if you get COVID that you'll be sicker. Yes, we have a ton of medications once you get COVID to be able to help you. I'm sure you're hearing about all the new meds that are out there, but it's hard to get access to those meds. And also, my kind of thing is I want to keep you healthy rather than treating you when you're sick. And so for these reasons, I'm happy to kind of think through and talk a little bit more about how we can get you to think about getting the vaccine maybe sooner, or if there's anything that's kind of keeping you a little scared, what it is that we should really think about with those things. And then we would kind of go into more detail.
Okay, listen, I have the booster. Thanks. Give it up for Dr. You just made my shoulders go down. That was so wonderful.
Well, I do want to say, and I think the other speakers, Dr. Chipley, Lash, Dr. Nisi, have really emphasized the most important thing you can do when you walk into one of these conversations, and we do it in HIV medicine all the time, right, is to take the stigma out of it. And I just want to acknowledge for healthcare workers, for those who believe in science, for those who, COVID is like a group project, and we cannot get a passing grade if everyone doesn't do their work. And it's so frustrating to be failing the same course over and over and over because your colleagues won't, get it together. So I understand the frustration, but I think the most important thing to remember is at this point, what anger and frustration in these conversations is doing is it's actually making people more entrenched. People are like, not only am I not going to get the vaccine, but also like, I'm never going to get it. I might have been thinking about it before. I'm never going to get it now. And so there is damage that we do, unfortunately, if we come at people really hard, if we are angry in how we are kind of coming at people. And so for me, it is helpful to remember the kind of tenets of providing care for the HIV population, which is no judgment and meeting people where they are. And I have patients who, will come in with HIV and they'll say, Doc, I'm not taking my medications. And I could get mad at them and I could, but, we start really slow. We say, well, what would help you to take it 2 days of this week? And you meet them where they are. And that's a central tenet, I think, of being in healthcare and really doing a lot of the stuff that requires motivational interviewing. So just a reminder to folks out there who are going to be having these holiday conversations. I know it is so frustrating, but try as best as you can to leave the judgment out of it, because you'll be so much more effective in having people actually hear you.
More gems, family. Meet people where they are, right? Stay calm. And don't be judgmental. Sure, Dr. Chipley.
To throw one very specific thing related to the children's vaccination, the 5 to 12 group. And this is where I have found some success when talking to some people. They will bring up, rightfully so, some of the reports of the myocarditis that was associated primarily with the Moderna. But one of the nice things I say, I heard those reports and I too was very concerned. I said, however, I've since learned that the Pfizer, which is now approved for the 5 through 12, is not really associated with those problems anywhere near the type of level. And once again, going back to the thing of, I really do hear your concern, because I really would be concerned, obviously. Dr. Yancey would be much more qualified to talk about this, obviously, but it is, once again, a way of saying, I hear your concern, but let me tell you information that I found out which helped alleviate my concern, which is that the FDA has actually, singled out the safer version. So, and that is, quite frankly, likely to come up in your conversations at some point when, because there was a good deal of journalistic publicity, rightfully so, about the problem.
Do we have a couple of seconds, or am I running to run you over with a couple of comments?
I think we have to bring you to stage, Dr. Yancey.
Okay.
Give us 1 second to
no
get you
problem.
on, and then you will have a second to speak. Are we going to be able to make that happen, Leslie?
I'm working on it.
Okay, so we're gonna get Dr. Yancey to the stage in 1 second, y'all, because Dr. Yancey you can't see him, but we can see him in the back. And he's like, I have a couple of things to help with the children's conversation. And we're gonna get you every bit of the tools that you need. But in the meantime, while we try to figure out the tech side of getting Dr. Yancey on stage, I want to ask you, Lash, because you said, I'll eat with you, I'll walk with you, I'll talk with you, I'll study with you. So the other thing that we know our folks are saying is, I'm gonna do my research. It's hard to imagine if you have Dr. Nisi or a Lash or a Dr. Sappho in your family that you feel like you need to do research. But what you all have told me is that these people have said to your face, they need to do their research. So when they say that to you, geniuses, where do you send them, Lash?
Yes. Like I'm all about folks doing their research. Like that is important. You know, whenever you're going to any type of doctor's appointment or whenever you're approaching a new situation, it's always important to just know what you're getting yourself into. But what gets me is when the research aren't primary sources, right? So a lot of times folks are getting information, not just about the vaccine, but I think that's just an issue just in general about the way that we're getting information. It's from a retweet. And oftentimes that person who retweeted it hasn't even read the article that they're retweeting. Or oftentimes they're getting information off of Instagram where people kind of like bring together concise bits of information to fit into a square. And unfortunately, that's kind of taking our ability to kind of really critically think through data and information for ourselves. So oftentimes when we get information, it's already been processed by someone who's made a conclusion, their own conclusion about whatever information they're going to share. So I think whenever folks tell me that they've done their research, I'm like, where? And if they're talking to me about Instagram or Twitter or like, they talk to me about like YouTubers who do these deep dives into just things that just don't even make sense. I try to send them to more reputable sources like the CDC, maybe their local public health organizations so affiliated with their state. The We Got Us website, we also have a lot of resources for folks to look into. But I think my biggest advice for folks doing their research is that there are people who can sound very educated, who can sound very informed, but not be talking about nothing, right? somebody can sit there and talk to you and you like, wow, the green juice really be doing it. And it does, right? So I really think it's important for folks to just kind of like really pay attention to a person when they're talking to you and making sure that they're doing their research in a reputable way as well.
My God, thank you. Dr. Yancey, 2 questions for you now that we got you back. Yes. When they say they're doing their research, where do you recommend that they go? And then if you could share your insights about how to talk more about the children.
Sure. I've found that directing them to the various sources, like, the websites that I know of are good websites, American Academy of Pediatrics, Center for Disease Control, they don't trust those either. Okay. And so they feel like that's just a part of the same establishment that recommended it in the first place. So I've not been very successful with that. But let me just say, the one advantage of having been out there 42 years is I've taken care of a lot of the parents of the children I'm trying to get vaccinated. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I will say to them, hey, John, your mom brought you to me when you were born. And you're now 28, you're now 29. I said, and I gave you, and your mom went along with it, every shot you were supposed to have. I said, I dedicated everything I could do to making sure you are staying healthy. Now, here you are, 6'3", 210 pounds, and you're the picture of health, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing for your baby. So here's the deal. You got to help me with this. There's only 2 options out there. Either after all these years, I don't know what they know on Twitter and Facebook from what you read last night. Either I don't know it, okay, And I'm just that dumb. Okay, now you're doing great, but I'm either so dumb I don't know, or the second option is that I do know it. I do know it's horribly dangerous, and I just want to give it to hurt your baby. Okay, so I just need you to pick one of those two out. And they look at me and they go like, huh? And I don't know how many times they have said, Dr. Yancey, I never thought about it like that. Okay, and so I think what it comes down to, yes, I want them to quote, trust the science, but I'm the representative of the science. And so therefore, it's more advantageous if they trust me if they trust the science through me, because they won't know the science, okay? They know me, but they don't know the science. So I want them to trust me and what I'm telling them about the science with those two options. Either I don't know what they read last night, or I just want to hurt their child. And with that has been the most successful thing for me to be able to do. And I've gotten quite a few, more than I thought I would, to say, you know what, I think I'll get this. This works.
I love that answer. That's just, again, all of you guys could really, really convince me if I wasn't on the right side, I think. Well, let me not use that right side. If I wasn't on the vaccinated side. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Yancey, let me ask, through Hood Medicine, and obviously you were kind enough to share your own anecdote. I know I've seen family dynamics change over this global health crisis, and a lot of different ways, from in the very beginning when some people were more comfortable with a little, I think, less restrictions and some people weren't, to then last holiday season when some people were like, we're getting together, God got us, and other people were like, you're crazy. So how have you seen family dynamics over this period? Kind of what have you seen in family dynamics?
Honestly, I think, and I don't know if you guys are all seeing it where you live, but it just feels like a lot of fatigue. Like, I honestly feel like I'm one of the last holdouts in my family, where I'm just like, I'm still keeping the quarantine. Like Ripley said, if we break the quarantine, we all gonna die. And I just believe in that alien, paradigm. So it just feels like, for me, a lot of fatigue. Like, people are taking their masks off more in public, especially, people who are vaccinated. They feel like that's a safe thing to do. And we've really mismanaged the communication about that, I think. And so it's not so much that I see like family dynamics changing, because I don't perceive, besides people with really small children who are really still holding the door because they have to, I don't see a lot of people still being as stringent as we would have been like maybe a year ago, which is concerning. Just because they threw open the Applebee's doesn't mean you have to go. It doesn't, like, people are at the baseball game, they're at all of the festivals, and it makes me scared, because I know what the virus is doing, and it's with you at Applebee's, it's in the club, it's happy that you went out too. And I just don't think people understand that enough, is that you helping the virus. Like, at the end of the day, whatever your argument is about the vaccine, or whatever your argument is about whether COVID is real or not, or whether it's a detrimental disease to catch, the virus doesn't care. It doesn't care if you think you could just pray it away and stay prayed up. It doesn't care what you believe or what God you believe in. The virus just wants to get in your mouth, take over your copy machine, and make its own copies. And if you go to the Applebee's and take your mask off to eat your quesadillas, it's like, bet. Let me have some salsa. Let me get up in there, so that I think we need to really think about what we're doing and stop thinking about it in terms of human relations. This is a battle of species, I don't know. That's where I'm at.
No, I mean, that's the very real talk that we wanted to hear. It reminds me of the verses that was on a little while ago when they first started to open them up, and Fat Joe said COVID was definitely in the building.
Yeah, right? For sure. Yeah.
COVID was definitely in the building, and we we know that, like you said, every time we take off our masks, every time we enter these crowded spaces, we are truly risking it all, whether we're boosted or vaccinated or not.
Because the thing is like, let's talk about Delta for 2 seconds, if you don't mind. But the thing is like, Delta, for example, and all of its many there's also lots of different Delta variants, Delta mutants. So it's like the viral load there is 1,200 times alpha, right? So we're talking about, not only are you taking your mask off in the restaurant, but every single time an infected person breathes, like that's how much viral load is like just hanging in the air. Like people don't understand that, these are little, nanoscopic particles floating on air currents. And so just because like the spacing in the restaurant is like you're a table away from somebody, COVID doesn't care that you're 6 feet from that person. Like this can still move in the air. Like, I don't understand. I don't think people understand like just the practicality of it. When you talk to people and they accidentally like spit on your mouth and you got to like kind of play it off, and just like all of that, we spit on each other so much. And that's what I want you to take away from this pandemic is how much we spit on each other, because that's all it is. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. You want people to spit in your face in the Applebee's, do it. But it scares me.
See, this is the reality rap that we came here for tonight, kids. Think about how much we're all spitting on each other when next time you think about Applebee's, y'all.
I'm going to get sued. They're going to sue me.
Well, I've been taking little notes, like I said, that I'm going to share of little nuggets that I took if you all do not share them again. But I want to make sure that I give each of you an adequate chance to answer this question, and we'll switch out Dr. Yancey and Dr. Chipley. But I really, really want to know, going back to the idea of a role play, and you're giving advice to me. I'm the person who's going home to Manana's house. I'm boosted, I'm vaccinated, and I'm entering an environment where it's just uncharted waters. It's just a smorgasbord of people. There's some vaccinated people, there's some unvaccinated people, there's some hardcore believers, there's some people that would drink the tranquilizer. What advice would you give to me if COVID comes up and I'm trying to convince people to come my way? And I will start with you, Dr. Sappho.
I was just going to say there's some practical things in that situation that you should do if you're going to be in an internal space with people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. If you have to go, fine. If you don't have to go, I would consider, exactly as Dr. Nisi said, just being mindful of decreasing your risk. If you have to go, you want to try to make sure that the area will be ventilated. So ask them to open the windows. You also want to consider actually having people do a test ahead of time. So we have all of these home diagnostic kits. So everyone can just go ahead, and you can buy them from the store. They're not that cheap, but it's what we have. You can buy the kits and make it like a fun thing. Come in and say, hey guys, let's all get tested real quick before we sit down to have like Thanksgiving meal. And I would say that might be worth doing, even if you're going to a place with all vaccinated folks. If you have people in that vaccinated group, like grandma who's 90, who are high risk if they did get COVID for being sick, even if they're vaccinated. And so there's just something to be kind of thought through there in that situation. And I'm going to let the other speakers kind of answer, the conversations around what to say to people. But just think about the logistics of this, which is 1, do you have to go if you're going to be around folks who are not vaccinated? And 2, if you are going, whether vaccinated or not, consider testing, seeing if everyone will test, just so you know whether, again, COVID has ridden into the room with you. You will have a better time. There are all these stories and reports now of people who have been careful the whole pandemic, and then they go to their best friend's wedding and they have a good old time, and they come back and they have COVID, and they've infected their young kids who haven't been able to get vaccinated yet. And it's unnecessary. And so some of this testing ahead of time can really help with those situations. And then I would say, as you're meeting folks who want to talk to you about COVID, use the approach that we've talked about of hearing them out. If you can convince out of the 10 unvaccinated folks you might talk to that day, one person to think about it, that it's success. And I think it goes back to the comment about, are you having a conversation or are you having a debate? You want to be seen as the person who has like an open door, and people start their conversation with you. And maybe all you've done is plant a seed, and they call you back a couple of days later and say, hey, Stella, like, I'm really interested in what you were saying. Will you come with me to get vaccinated? You could really change and save someone's life. So figure out the logistics before you go. And then when you're there, stay open and non-judgmental. And I think you can have some really good conversations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the logistics and the really, really thoughtful precautionary steps that we can take. Dr. Chipley, what would you add to that, if anything?
I really like the notion of combining all the tools that you have, masking when it's appropriate, if you're going to be eating in indoor space, making sure that people are at their maximum safety, either by vaccination or by testing prior. That's very important. I also will have conversations with people, sometimes playing the old dude card. I am old, and I will ask people, tell me, who do you know who's ever died of diphtheria? And when I was in medical school, I would do that too, and no one did. And I said, well, I never knew him, but my uncle did, my mother's brother. And I said, and the wonderful thing is that you don't know anyone who died of diphtheria, and that's because vaccinations work. Also, when people worry about boosters, saying that immunity is waning, therefore the vaccination doesn't work, and it's kind of like, look, you get a tetanus every 10 years, and it's every 5 if you've had an exposure. It's not because the tetanus vaccination doesn't work, it's just because circulating antibody immunity wanes. Your T cells may still be working fine, they still may be giving good commands to the B cells, but the fact of the matter is you just don't have the antibodies floating in the plasma soup like you did before. And it's no problem talking to people in terms like you get boosters, not even just second doses of a vaccine in order to be fully vaccinated. We get boosters for, we get our Tdaps. And I always hurt after one. That's just true. I always do. That's like, I don't care. I got the Shingrix, both of them. So
Cry now, laugh later, right?
Yeah, and I just tell them, this is what I do.
That's wonderful. Cry now, laugh later. It could save your life. Dr. Nisi, I think you're gonna say, I'm not coming because y'all not gonna spit on me. Let me not put words in your mouth.
I'm glad my essence is coming across at least. Sorry, the question was.
No, I was just final parting words. Any
for
our frontline family?
No, I mean, certainly don't go. I want people to hold the door, it's not time to let up. It's frustrating and it's been a long time, but this is an epidemic of personal responsibility, right? Every single person in the chain has to hold the line, right? You can't decide, you know what, whatever, I'm gonna go to Applebee's because I want those ribs. And the thing is, it's all we have to do is pivot. Just think it over. When you're planning your holiday meals, drop a plate off. There are other ways to share food or, find clever ways to get together that's not in a cramped space with everyone laughing and spitting all over each other. I just feel we need to get creative. We started to in the beginning. We started taking advantage of delivery services and carry out, and all the restaurants adjusted and our employers adjusted and let us work from home. And then it was just capitalism won out again. And, I thought we were going to turn the corner and go into the future a little bit, but no, we're right back where we started. Everyone threw everything wide open and they're just it feels like we've given up on containment. And so what I want to say to people is, don't you give up on containment. Hold the door. You know what I mean? For the people in your bubble, for the people in your home, for the people in your life, you don't care about the community, if you don't care about the world, you don't care about the vulnerable nations that aren't going to get vaccinated for the next 5 to 7 years, then just start with the people in your crib and hold the door. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not time yet. It sucks and nobody wants to hear that, but there are creative ways to try to share space and family time. And quite frankly, with the way things are going, maybe we should all think about like what we can do for someone else this holiday season. How can you give of your time? How can you help somebody out? Because everyone's struggling. Like, that's what I would hope people would be more preoccupied with as we go into this holiday season on the crest of a new wave. What can you do to help your community?
Very important question for us to all always be asking, really. How can we be helping? Dr. Yancey, I'm going to shoot it over to you because you really nailed it with the ain't nobody trying to give your baby harmful toxins. I took care of you. I'm going to take care of your baby. So what would you say to us?
Well, I think that everything that's been said is just spot on. That's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be an associate ad hoc member of Hood Medicine. I'm listening to Dr. Nisi, but I what I'd like to say is that, once something occurs, you can never take it back. You can never go back on it. So as difficult as it may be, and I fully understand it, difficult it may be not to like group and get together, it's going to be that much more difficult if grandma dies, okay, and you always wonder, did I have something to do with that? And I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on you because it's not something that's happened yet. But if I can prevent the guilt before the guilt occurs, then I think that will be beneficial. So I need you to fast forward a little bit and see, just the what if. And I always say, not every child that plays in the street gets hit, but it doesn't make it a good idea. And so I think that that when I talk to them, I kind of go that, okay, but what happens if it doesn't go down like you think it's going to go down? You're going to have a lot of trouble getting over that. And so I just try to, put it to, everything everybody else has said is just be fantastic. The testing, the masking, the distancing, and whatever. But what if it goes south? If it goes south, you're going to have trouble getting over that. That's the way I put it.
Now that's the double truth, Ruth, as the kids say. Well, maybe the kids don't say it, but I say it. Listen. Lash, I really want to hear from you. I mean, I know there's been so many wonderful gems and jewels dropped. Is there anything else from your perspective as somebody who's in school right now, probably has colleagues who are grappling with this? What's the word?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, like you said, has said phenomenal things, and I'm in agreement with everyone. The one thing that I want to bring into the conversation is that I feel like a lot of folks in my generation right now are listening to a lot of celebrities and folks who have a lot of access to resources who are telling them don't go and get the vaccine. But what I hope that they will remember is that when Ice Cube gets sick from COVID-19 because he's not vaccinated, if one of these politicians gets COVID-19 because they're not vaccinated, they have the resources to have a personal chef come and cook for them every single day, to have a personal doctor come and care for them every single day. And they automatically, most likely, will have access to the best healthcare accessible. And a lot of us who they're telling not to get vaccinated or kind of trying to influence with their decision, we're not going to have access to those same things. So I just hope that people will really reflect on that and think about how, when you're listening to people sending these messages about the vaccine, how different our life experiences really are on the day-to-day. And if you are a service worker, if you are a student, if you are someone who on the day-to-day basis have to put yourself on the front lines and have increased exposure to this virus, unfortunately, you're going to be more at risk for contracting the disease. And on top of that, you might not have as much access to getting the care that you need to recover from it. So really, really make sure that you reflect and have that discernment process, because not everybody out here is looking out for you. And I think that there are folks who truly, genuinely are. And I hope that message truly comes across.
You couldn't have said it better. And I wasn't going to put your generation on you, but since you want
Yeah, and it's not just my generation. I heard
no,
a couple,
no, it's
old
not.
heads out there saying the same thing, but
Oh,
yeah,
I mean,
just you already know.
Ice Cube is my generation. How you think I feel? What a disappointment.
Absolutely.
I just listen, everyone. I can't say thank you enough to you geniuses for taking your time with our Frontline family tonight. I think that the offerings that you left us with really apply whether you choose to go the Dr. Nisi route, right? And just say no for your safety, for your sanity, to not get spit on. Or if you feel like you want to go the other way and it's worth, as Dr. Yancey said, risking it all on grandma's life. Those are your personal decisions. They're not our decisions to make for you, but I will just again quickly review what we've learned tonight, because this is going to help you no matter what decision you have to make, right? Am I being useful or am I being right? Is this a conversation or debate? And keep in mind, right, this can go either way. If you're saying, I can't come, I want to be safe, don't make it a debate, make it a conversation. If you want to get through that conversation and not turning it into something you don't want it to be, don't turn it into a confrontation. Keep it a conversation, and always use your I statements. I'm doing this because it's the best thing for our family. I'm doing this because I feel like it's what we have to do to stay safe. And I just really, 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 really lash Dr. Nisi, Dr. Yancey, Dr. Safo, Dr. Chipley, Leslie Mack. I really, really, really can't thank you all enough. But really, I mean, this has just been so delightful and helpful for our family, and a really wonderful kickoff for self-care season. So thank you all so very much. Now, Frontline family, let's get into self-care season events that are coming up, because we want you to rock with us. And we, like I said at the top of the program, have some really wonderful things in the hopper. So very quickly, on November 26th, we're going to get into some mindfulness for self-care season. It's going to be a mental health skill up session hosted by the homie Vahisha Hassan. On December 3rd, we're going to have a family dinner party with Chef Aisha from the Round Midnight Diner and our old friend bartender Barry. If you've been rocking with the Frontline, bartender Barry's been with us before, and he always teaches us how to make a very nice cocktail and a mocktail. On the 10th, we have a very special guest coming back to join the family again, kindred in the family soul. We're going to have a concert and a talk back about artistry in these times. And then we're going to round out the year doing some vision boarding. What is 2022 going to look like? What do we want to see? What are we manifesting? What are we dreaming about together, family? And we want to do that together as we close out the year and think about how we're going to start fresh again in January. So again, to our esteemed guests, thank you so much. To our Frontline family that's always here, we're so happy to see you and be getting back together again to close out the year strong. We love you. We'll see you for the mental health skill up. Talk to you soon, friends.
Great job, everyone. Thank you all so much.